Merab Davishvili defeats Umar Nurmagomedov at UFC 311. Islam Makhachev defeated Renato Moicano and wants to go up to welterweight to win a second belt. Alex Pereira is dethroned by Magomedov Ankalaev, while rumor has it Jones vs. Aspinall could happen sometime this year. What do all these fights have in common? Each defending champion is an underdog. And that's something that seems to be happening quite a bit lately. A while back I made a video going over every UFC champion underdog that I could find, which was a total of approximately 40. But keep in mind that this includes every UFC event through March of 2021, with the UFC 259 main event as the last entry, Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya. So picking things up from there, we have about 25 more entries in the span of roughly 2.5 years. First entry is the rematch of Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan at UFC 273. After the controversial disqualification ending of the first fight, Sterling was now coming in the rematch as the champion. Most people anticipated the belt was coming right back to Yan, so not surprisingly, the odds were pretty heavy in his favor, coming in as a -270 favorite, while Sterling was a +230 underdog. Next, we have Jan Blachowicz versus Yuri Prochazka, a fight that didn't happen but was anticipated to take place, and betting odds were made official. Prochazka opened as a -120 favorite, while champion Blachowicz was a +100 underdog. It was actually Glover Teixeira that got the next shot and defeated Blachowicz, so when Prochazka faced the Brazilian for the belt, he was once again the betting favorite. The betting lines ranged from -185 to -200, while Glover Teixeira ranged from a +160 to a +170 underdog. The next two entries come just after Charles Oliveira became the new lightweight champion, and betting odds came out for the Brazilian in fights against both Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. McGregor being about a -170 favorite and Dustin Poirier roughly a -180 favorite. Champion Oliveira ranged from a +145 to 155 underdog in those fights. Next entry is the rematch between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes. It was wildly thought that Pena's victory over Nunes was a fluke, which was definitely supported by the fact that Nunes came into the rematch anywhere from a -240 to a -285 favorite, while champion Pena ranged from a +200 to a +225 underdog. Here's one that fans forget about. It's Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou. Former training partners, and rumor had it that Gane always got the better of the champ in sparring. We even got a little bit of their sparring footage, but Gane was about a -115 favorite while Ngannou was about a +105 underdog. And yes, this list won't be in perfect chronological order, but up next we have the rematch between Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili. These odds were incredibly close, and some betting lines even had it dead even, but the most commonly referenced odds had Weili as a -115, making Namajunas a champion underdog at a -105. It was a close fight and Thug Rose edged out a decision, but she wasn't as lucky in her next fight, losing a split decision to Carla Esparza. And with Cookie Monster once again as the champ, she now becomes one of the biggest champion underdogs on the list in her fight against Zhang Weili. Weili making yet another champion an underdog, with Esparza ranging from a +265 to a +285 underdog. Weili was anywhere from a -330 to a -385 favorite. Next on the list is the fourth fight between Brandon Moreno and Davidson Figueiredo. Regardless of who won, the first three fights had the champion as the betting favorite, but that wasn't the case for match number 4. Even though Figueiredo came in this bout as the champ, Moreno was about a -140 favorite, with the champ being about a +110 underdog. For some reason I thought their third fight also had a champion underdog, but apparently that's not the case. Another sizable champion underdog bout is the third bout between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. After Edwards took the belt in the rematch, the trilogy saw Usman anywhere from a -325 to a 375 favorite, while champion Edwards was about a +280 underdog. And with Edwards as the champ, there was a huge wave of additional opponents, making Edwards a champion underdog several times over. Starting with his next opponent, Colby Covington, who opened as a -135 favorite, while Edwards was a +115 underdog. The odds gap narrowed over time, and by the day of the fight, many of the odds had reversed to have Edwards as the favorite. The next two entries on the list didn't actually take place while Edwards was champion, but odds had both Shavkat Rakhmonov and Khamzat Chimaev as the favorite to beat Edwards. Rakhmonov coming in as a -210 favorite and Chimaev a -200 favorite. Champion Edwards being a +180 underdog to Rakhmonov and a +170 underdog against Chimaev. We're not done talking about these several fighters, but we'll come back to it because next we have the rematch between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso. When Grasso had her huge upset win over Shevchenko, it made perfect sense that the Bullet would still be the favorite in the rematch, specifically a -250 favorite, while champion Grasso was a +200 underdog. And fun fact, Grasso was not a champ underdog in the trilogy fight. And that brings us to Aljamain Sterling's second title defense against Henry Cejudo. After retiring as champ, Cejudo was out for a short while before returning, which may be why he came in the fight as a slight -115 favorite, while Sterling was a -105 underdog. Next, we have 4 entries regarding the middleweight title, the first being the rematch of Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya at UFC 287. Izzy was clearly winning the first fight going into the last round at UFC 281, so when Pereira got the stoppage in the 5th round, it wasn't very surprising that the former champ came into the rematch as high as a -155 favorite, while the newly crowned champion Pereira was about a +120 underdog, although several betting lines had the odds closer to dead even. Next, we have the hypothetical rematch between Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. After Strickland pulled off a huge upset to win the belt, the betting odds for a rematch had Stylebender as a slight -120 favorite, while champion Strickland was a +100 underdog. But instead, Strickland's first title defense was against Dricus du Plessis. And although Strickland opened as the favorite, odds flipped to having DDP as a slight -115 favorite, while Strickland was a -110 underdog. DDP won that fight, so we go right into our next entry with his first title defense against the former champ, Israel Adesanya, who was a -125 favorite, while champion DDP was a +100 underdog. The next entry is the presumed next bout for the women's bantamweight title, when Juliana Pena took the belt back by defeating Raquel Pennington. As controversial a decision it may be, she called for Amanda Nunes to come out of retirement and face her for a trilogy fight. A third fight between them seems highly unlikely, but Pena is an underdog against her most likely next opponent, Kayla Harrison, who is a -400 favorite, while the champ is a +300 underdog. The next 2 entries stem from Belal Muhammad, defeating Leon Edwards to become the welterweight champ. We've already mentioned that when Leon Edwards was the champ, he was a betting underdog against Shavkat Rakhmonov, and when Belal obtained the belt, he too took the role of underdog, specifically a +170 underdog, while Rakhmonov was a -200 favorite. And it's certainly not impossible that we see a super fight between Belal and Islam Makhachev. After his last title defense, Makhachev made it clear that he wanted to be a double champ. And odds have Makhachev as high as a -230 favorite, while Belal ranges from a +170 to a +195 underdog. The next 2 entries pertain to the bantamweight title, starting with then-champion Sean O'Malley versus Merab Davishvili, who was a -180 favorite, while champion O'Malley was a +155 underdog. But roles reversed as soon as Davishvili obtained the belt, becoming the underdog to Umar Nurmagomedov, who ranged from a -170 to a -330 favorite, while Davishvili ranged from a +170 to a +250 underdog. Dricus du Plessis will be fighting Khamzat Chimaev, and at this point it's not a surprise to see anyone an underdog against this guy. The odds will probably shift even more before the fight takes place, but the betting odds had Chimaev as a -200 favorite, while champion DDP is a +170 underdog. I've been hearing that Chimaev is even a favorite to beat Alex Pereira, but I wasn't able to find any official odds to support that. And speaking of Pereira, he had a close fight with Magomed Ankalaev, who opened at about a -140 favorite, while the champ was about a +115. However, on the night of the fight, most every betting line had Pereira as the favorite. Another recent title fight on the list is Zhang Weili defending her belt against Tatiana Suarez. While the opening odds had the champ as a slight favorite, it didn't take long for odds to switch and have the challenger as a -125 favorite, while Weili was a +105 underdog. Perhaps the biggest fight on this list is the potential fight between John Jones and Tom Aspinall. Dana White is confident that this fight will happen this summer, but we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, Aspinall opened as a -150 favorite, while Jones was about a +130 underdog. I'm curious to see how the odds may shift if and when this fight is officially announced. And now we come to the final entry on this list, and it's Jens Pulver vs. BJ Penn at UFC 35. You're probably wondering why this one wasn't included in part 1, which is a fair question, so let's take a quick look back at that video.
And while I'm only including the ones that I've 100% verified, there are a few I'm still curious about, but unfortunately the public information regarding the betting lines is limited to non-existent.
So yeah, I couldn't find specific odds and didn't include it. which now doesn't seem right. There's plenty of references to the odds, including this 2017 article that mentions the odds being 3-1. Even Pulver himself spoke about being the underdog in that fight during the Legends Q&A the weekend of UFC 290 in July of 2023.
The fight with BJ Penn the first time was a monster because I was an 8-1 underdog. And the way that he exploded onto the scene, he was the most decorated American Jiu-Jitsu athlete ever. You know what I'm saying?
So even though I can't confirm if Penn was a -200 favorite or a -600 favorite, it's essentially confirmed. And I find it to be a bit poetic that we come full circle and have the very first fight I referenced in part 1 also be the last entry in this video. I anticipate there will be plenty of future entries to this list, so I'm leaving the door open for a part 3 video. A big thank you to all my fight freaks. Remix is signing out, but I'll return to bring your MMA fix.